Welcome, and thank you for joining today's webcast, Top 10 Things to Do Before You Retire, presented by Fidelity Investments and sponsored by your employer. I'm Carrie Sweeney. I'm a Vice President at Fidelity Investments, joining you today from our Boston office. With me today is Marcia Mantell. Marcia is President of Mantell Retirement Consulting. She's an author, blogger, and leading voice in the retirement industry. And Marcia's got 25 years experience traveling around the country, talking with people about how they're getting ready to retire and hearing their many questions and stories. John Wells is also with us. John is a Director of Retirement Planning from the Dallas area. And some of you may recognize John. He's one of our veteran Fidelity representatives, going on 20 years now, John? 20 years, yeah. John works directly with individuals and couples every day to help them plan successfully for their retirement. And he's here to share some real stories about clients and how they're getting ready to retire. And clearly, planning for retirement is very important to you. 50,000 people registered for this webcast. We're thrilled that you're here today, and we've got a great program in store. Now, there's many things that we all need to do as we approach retirement. We're going to share our top 10 ideas with you, and we'll address many of your questions along the way. But please know that if we don't get to your question specifically, you can call us anytime. Our representatives, just like John, know your employer's retirement plan inside and out, and they can help you figure out what you need to do to get ready for retirement. And keep in mind that their help is free. It's a benefit of investing in your employer's plan. Now, at Fidelity, we believe it's critical to plan thoughtfully for retirement, but we know that planning is not easy for everyone. In fact, some people hate to plan, right? But that's okay. That's why we're here. We love what we do, and we'll take it step by step with you and make it easy. And we also know that many of you are in different places on your road to retirement. Some of you might still have your nose to the grindstone. Maybe you're 10 years or more away from retirement. Others might be starting to really imagine what it would be like not to work full time anymore. Maybe you're 5 years out or so. And still, many others might be on the doorstep of retirement, ready to take the leap. So wherever you are, and even if you have no idea where you are, we have something for you. We're just glad that you're here. So let's dive in. And again, these are our top 10 topics. They're not in any particular order. They're all important to address, frankly, and you can choose the order that works for you. And it all starts off with how you define your retirement. Now, thinking about retirement is all about that next chapter and what you really want to do when you'll have more time. And so here's our first question. Let's take a look. It comes from Rose at Nationwide, who says, okay, get out your crystal ball because I need to know how much money I need to retire. Okay, so Marcia, we talk a lot about the money that you need for retirement, but first you have to really envision what you want to do when you retire, right?
Well, that's exactly right, Carrie. You know, the amount of money you need directly corresponds to what you'll be doing in retirement. So first you need to know what you're going to be needing. Now, Rose, I wish I did have a crystal ball, but what I really have instead is some really good information about how to define these years that we're calling retirement. And it's quite interesting that 50% of people in a recent Fidelity survey said that their decision to retire was in fact not about the money at all. So of course your finances are important, but many think they aren't the main event. Their retirement decisions were based rather on a combination of 5 different factors. Family. Now, this is a big consideration for many, both the good and the bad situations about a family. Now, it might be that you have aging parents, or you have a spouse who's retired and you'd rather spend time together, or you want to spend time caring for your grandchildren. So your family may be a big driver behind your retirement plans. Health is also a factor. If you or your spouse or partner falls ill, both of you may be retiring unexpectedly. And then there's one of these factors we don't talk about as much as we probably should, and it's what our jobs and careers do for us personally. You know, they provide such a deep identity that, well, frankly, it can be lost as soon as you walk out that door. And that's what a lot of retirees tell us, that it took a while to redefine their own personal identity once they were retired. So whether you want to maintain your lifestyle in retirement or make big changes, well, this is also central to the decision when to retire. And the last consideration is financial in nature. Before you make that decision to retire, take a good look at your financial picture. You know, it may be the driver that says, well, you should maybe work a couple years longer. You might want to retire, but working longer would be a good thing. So looking at your own situation in a broad sense, this is why creating that retirement income plan is so very important. The better you can define your retirement in advance, the better prepared you are to enter this new chapter of life.
Yeah, Marcia, I agree. I think knowing how to define retirement is really the first step to getting to retirement. And I always say that individuals need to ask themselves 2 questions to really know if they're truly ready to retire. That first question is, do I have enough? Sure. And the second question is, have I had enough? And do I have enough? This is all about the financial plan, your retirement income plan. The have I had enough, this is all about have you accomplished what you set out to do in your profession and career, and you're ready for what's next in life. And let me say, it is harder than many people think to just walk off of a job. Much of their identity is wrapped up in what they've dedicated many years to do. I have a family that I work with, Barbara and Gary, and we sat down, put together a retirement income plan for them, and we stress tested it with every economic and personal what if that they could think of, from what if I retire early, what if I live to be 100, and so on. Their plan allows them to accomplish everything they set in their goals, no matter what situation that we look at. But Gary looks at Barbara and myself, and he looks and says, I'm just not ready to retire yet. I love the people I work with, I love what I do, and so I'm just not ready. Barbara would prefer that he retire sooner than later, but they both agreed they feel so much more confident knowing that he can literally retire anytime he wants.
That's great, Marcia and John. So we know that these factors help us decide when to retire, but we also know that the other 50% of people feel that their retirement is driven by the money first and foremost, right? So that leads us to our second topic, and that's get your financial house in order. As you move into retirement, you'll see that you have a variety of different accounts, and getting them organized, it matters. So our viewers have asked us how to deal with multiple accounts, so let's take a look. Rosemary from NiSource Inc. is asking, how do you ensure you have a steady stream of money each month when you have multiple types of accounts? So Marcia, can you start us off on this question from Rosemary?
Sure. Rosemary, you're so right. Most of us do have many different accounts that we've built up over the years, and they're really earmarked for retirement. So it will be important to first identify all of the accounts you do have and find them all. I think you'll be surprised what you do find. Then you'll have to deal with these different accounts. There are different tax rules, there are different distribution rules, access rules, beneficiary options, and so on for each type of account you have. So it might be helpful to think about setting up a blueprint for your retirement financial house. You know, instead of rooms on that blueprint, you'll see where all your money is. Lay out this blueprint with all your different accounts, put on all of your spouse's or partner's accounts, and include your debt. And this way you can see what you've got where. You already have at least one retirement account, the 403B or the 401k that you're saving in today, but think about all the other accounts you have as well. Various IRAs, traditional or Roth IRAs, small business plans, pensions, life insurance, annuities. And then you've got things like taxable investment accounts, CDs, bank accounts, and on and on. Now, we suggest you don't forget to address the debt you may also carry. You know, certain debt can be helpful and can be good to have, but as you move closer to your retirement years, less debt is usually better. So we like to think about debt in terms of, well, it's in the doghouse on your blueprint for retirement.
Right.
You know, and John, we talk a lot about different clients and how they approach getting their financial house in order, and you've got some interesting clients.
Yeah, I work with a great client, George, and I remember when George called me before our first meeting, he said, what should I bring so that I'm fully prepared for the meeting? And I sent him a budget worksheet. I asked him to bring in his different financial account statements. And I still remember the day that he showed up to the office for the first time. He was literally carrying one of those plastic milk crates as a makeshift file cabinet. And he had all kinds of things stuffed in there, from unopened account statements, utility bills. I looked at him and he said, well, I just wanted to make sure I brought everything. The good news is we were able to sit down, help him get organized, help him get his financial house in order, and ultimately get a plan in place.
That's so funny. I can just see him coming in with that giant milk crate. Well, it's good to know that you could help him get his financial house in order. The next step after that would be to create a retirement income plan, and that's number 3 on our list. And with that, we've got another question, so let's take a look. So Mike from Wabtec Corporation asks, what's the single most important tip or rule to follow to assure a successful retirement plan? So Marcia, we talk about this a lot, don't we? What is that most important tip?
Well, Carrie and Mike, there is a single most important tip, and that is to create a written retirement income plan. That's it. No magic here. It's important to first understand that a retirement income plan is not like anything you've built before. It's not the same as a will or creating an estate plan, and it's not like saving for retirement. This plan is unique and specifically designed to show you how your money can be distributed over a long period of time to pay for your retirement. Because once that paycheck from your employer stops, it's always a surprise, but the bills still keep coming on in. So you've got to self-manage retirement, and that retirement income plan is your roadmap to show you how. So a good place to start is to take an inventory of all your expenses and all your income sources that you're going to have in retirement. And it's more than creating just a budget, because you need to look at both sides of the equation. There's the expense side, over here your typical budget, but then the income side, plus any financial situations that might come up that are special. So you have to consider it all in one big piece. The goal when building your retirement income plan is to align expenses with specific sources of income. For example, Fidelity believes it's most important to use your guaranteed income sources like Social Security or pensions to pay for essential expenses, things like your food, your housing, your health care, that sort of thing, and do that first. Then use all of your other assets to pay for your other expenses. So your plan will also help you take advantage of the retirement options that become available at specific ages. This is new as you're moving into retirement. So for example, once you turn 50, you can do what we call catch-up contributions and super save for your retirement. That means you can put $6,000 more into your 401k or 403b this year, plus $1,000 more in your IRA. Now when you reach your early 60s, you've got some big decisions to make. One is your Social Security claiming strategy. When will be the ideal time to take Social Security? And if you have a pension, are you eligible at 60 or at 62, and is it the right time to take it? So key decisions being made in your early 60s. At 65, you become eligible for Medicare, and you've only got a small window of time to apply so that you aren't penalized later. Then 70 and a half rolls around, and here required minimum distributions begin. This is the age where you're required by the IRS to begin taking money out of your retirement accounts. And if you don't, you may be hit with a 50% penalty. So the bottom line is, it's critical to create your retirement income plan as soon as possible so you can get a full look at your personal situation.
Yeah, Marcia, I second that. I find that clients are just so much more confident as soon as they have their plan in place. And it can be complicated even if you don't have 20 different accounts to deal with. But there's lots of benefits that come out of putting together your own personal plan. The first thing we do is really spend some time talking about how do you envision retirement? What does that look like? Is it working part-time? Is it living in the country with your grandkids? Is it buying a motorhome and literally traveling coast to coast? The second thing we're going to do is spend a lot of time talking about what concerns you have and what risks do you face. We really want to dig in and find out, do you have enough saved and are you in the right investments? And then lastly, we want to spend time talking about how are we going to get there. And we're going to do that so that we can make sure that we have the right plan in place, go from this shift from savings to spending, make sure that we can do everything we want to do on our bucket list and we don't have to worry about running out of money. And I agree, Marcia, it starts with doing that budget, looking at an inventory. It's really amazing what you'll find.
Yeah, John and Marcia, thanks for that. And we can't overstate it, can we? That retirement income plan is just so important. And the good news is that we can build it with you. So we'll help you sort out your expenses. We'll help you sort out your income sources. And one of those income sources, Social Security, it actually warrants a deeper look. And this is a place where we get many, many questions. So we've made that our fourth topic, understanding Social Security. Let's take a look at one of the questions that we've received. So Deborah at Whole Foods is wondering, what is the best age to start collecting Social Security? Well, isn't that just the magic question? So Marcia, there's so much to cover with Social Security, but can you provide for our viewers a summary of the highlights?
Well, sure. And Deborah, thanks for your question. It's the exact right question that each of us needs to ask. The answer, however, well, it's just not so easy to get to. So let me give you a few highlights that will be important as you think about the best age when you should start collecting your own benefits. So for most of us, Social Security will be the foundation of retirement income. But your exact amount will depend on your earnings history and when you claim. Now, spouses, even if they haven't worked, are eligible for Social Security income, and divorced individuals are also eligible for Social Security benefits on their ex's record, but only if they meet certain rules. So you'll need to know your full retirement age, or you'll see it written as FRA. Now, that used to be 65 for all of us, but now it's not anymore. So you need to look on a table. What you'll find is anyone born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age is 67. But if you were born between 1943 and 1959, your FRA is 66 and some number of months. Now, the earliest age, and most people know this, the earliest age you can claim is 62, unless you're a widow or widower. But be mindful of the drastic cut in income you'll take if you do claim early. The decisions you make about when to claim are personal and generally irrevocable. If you claim early, you'll lock in up to a 30% pay cut on your monthly income. This is a big cut in your income. But on the other hand, if you can wait until after your FRA, you'll get an additional 8% per year bonus up until you reach age 70. So for more details, use Social Security's website, ssa.gov, because claiming your benefit is a personal decision, but the consequences can be significant. So think about how Social Security will be paying you an income in your 80s and 90s and not just in your 60s.
Yeah, Marcia, it's such a misunderstood program. And unfortunately, I find that so many clients I meet with, they're just getting it wrong. I can't tell you how many times they'll come in for a meeting and say, yeah, I think I know exactly when I want to file for Social Security. And then after we spend an hour together, they leave with a completely different plan. I'm working with a couple, Kevin and Donna, and they came in and said, yeah, we have a pretty good idea what we think we want to do. But then after we kind of got under the hood, if you will, and dug into their Social Security statement and really looking not just at that front summary page, but the entire earnings history. We looked at the implications if they filed early. We looked at full retirement age. We looked at the delayed retirement credits. We talked all about taxes and what happens if they work during retirement. And then ultimately, they ended up doing completely the opposite. Kevin is going to wait to take advantage of the delayed retirement credits. Donna's going to take hers at full retirement age, and that was completely different than what they initially thought would be best for them. But after looking at their overall plan, this is what made the most sense.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's an excellent summary of a really complex topic. There's clearly a lot to know about Social Security, and our representatives can help you determine the best time for you or for you and your spouse to claim right down to the month and year. All right, now moving on, topic number 5, and that is you need to address the 5 key risks to your retirement. And many of you wrote in asking about these risks. So let's take a look at a couple of questions. So Jane from the University of Nebraska wonders, what do the actuarial tables say now about the length of life expectancy for those in their early 60s? Okay. And related, let's see, Larry from Total Refining and Petrochemicals is asking, what's the current thinking on withdrawals from retirement accounts? Is there a magic number, or is it 2%, 3%, 4%? So, Marcia, these are 2 of the 5 key risks. Can you share some insights on those?
Well, sure. And Jane and Larry, you've hit on the 2 risks that are probably the most important to understand. Let's first look at all 5 key risks. They are longevity, healthcare costs, which are only increasing, inflation, asset allocation, and then withdrawal rate. Now, these risks all interconnect to make planning for retirement income quite a challenge. The answers come out in your retirement income plan. And longevity is the game changer. There's a good chance that you'll live well beyond the average life expectancy. So, Jane, to answer your question about how long we might live, well, here are the latest estimates if you first make it to age 65. For you gentlemen, you have a 25% chance of living to 92. But us ladies, well, we have a 25% chance of living till 94 and one of a couple till 99. Well, the implications of this longevity means that healthcare expenses can be very significant. And even things like low inflation can really eat away at the savings you do have. So your nest egg must be invested to cover both income and growth to overcome these risks. And then you'll need to manage your withdrawals carefully to have money for some 30 years in retirement. Now, Larry, you were hoping for a magic number, and frankly, we wish there was such a thing. But what we have instead is a good place to start. And here's how I like to think about withdrawal rate and what might help you as well. It's not going to be 10%. That is just too high. More likely, it will start out at 3 or 4 or 5% when you're looking at this long 30-year planning horizon. But now think about it differently. If you're retiring early, let's say 55, you're planning now for some 40 years in retirement. So 3% could actually be too high. But on the other hand, when you get into your 80s, well, you probably don't have 30 years anymore to plan for, and your percentage can be higher, maybe 6 or 7%. And then we've got to factor in the reality of living in retirement. Some years you're going to spend higher, and some years then lower. You've got to balance this out during your spending years. So working closely with your Fidelity representative can help you figure out the best rate of withdrawal for you to start with based on your situation, and then look at it every year in retirement. Because sadly, there's just no single magic number.
You're right, Marcia. There is no single magic number, and this is exactly an area that I spend a lot of time with my clients that are nearing retirement. The concept of withdrawal rate is a new concept for many people. And it's a really important factor for the plan, especially when you consider the impact of a market downturn and a withdrawal from your savings. And so we need to really think about what it means for a 3.5%, a 4 or 5% withdrawal rate. To put this in perspective, for every $100,000 that you have saved, that's about $4,000 a year that you can take safely in retirement. And this surprises a lot of people because I don't think they've really thought seriously about the fact that they may need to plan for 30 years because, as you mentioned, Marcia, longevity is a game changer. A funny story about this, I work with a family, and Rose is the grandmother. And Rose is in her 90s, and she lives in Palm Springs in one of those retirement communities. And I asked her recently, Rose, how's retirement going these days? And she smiled and she said, John, things are great for me. And she said, but I have found that now when I go to lunch with my other retired friends, I've got to let the younger retirees do the driving. And I said, really, Rose? And how old are they? And she said, they're in their 80s.
In their 80s. Well, having a long retirement like Rose would be wonderful, no doubt. But we know that dealing with those 5 key risks can be challenging, so just keep in mind that our representatives like John can help you address each of those risks. Now, one of the most important ways that we can feel prepared for a long retirement is if we're sure we're on track. And that's our 6th item, and it's a popular question that we receive from many of you as well. So let's take a look. So Mary Lou from the University of Washington wants to know, is there a rule of thumb for how much someone needs to have saved prior to retirement? So Marcia, we get a lot of questions about this. What would you say to Mary Lou and our viewers about how to know if you're on track?
Well, right, Mary Lou, you're right on. This is the question to ask. And we think there are 3 important rules of thumb that can help you be more confident that you are on track to save enough for your retirement. So first, and probably the most important rule of thumb, is don't guess. Don't guess that you've saved enough. You need to be sure and confident that you really do have enough to retire, and that you know what kinds of trade-offs you may need to make so that you can meet all the needs you have in retirement. Now, second, there's a milestone strategy from Fidelity. And think about this as aiming for 10 times your salary by the time you get to retirement. Now, also know this is a conservative strategy for those who are looking to set a specific amount of savings, trying to get to a particular dollar. So you can gauge your progress at various ages. For example, at age 50, do you have 6 times your current salary? And then at 67, do you have 10 times? But keep in mind, these targets don't work for everyone. And please don't worry if this isn't where you are with your savings. Remember that you'll look at your entire life picture as you decide about retiring. If you're planning to downsize in retirement, or maybe you've paid off all your debt, you might not need that much, 10 times salary. But if you're planning on lots of travel and having a second home and, paying for your grandchildren's education, well, you might need more. So it's all relative to your situation. Now, the last rule of thumb is to fully utilize all the savings options available to you. You can maximize the savings going right into your employer's plan. That's $18,000 this year, the maximum. And you can use the catch-up option once you reach age 50. That's an additional $6,000 this year. You can also fund an IRA outside of the employer plan, so you can sock away another $5,500 this year plus $1,000 in catch-ups. So John, these are general rules of thumb, but do you talk to them with your clients?
I do, Marcia. I like sharing these guidelines. I like to think, we all live in a Fitbit world, meaning we like to have a simple way to have a gauge to know whether we're on track or not. But how we get there is going to be individualized. We need to start, as you mentioned, by taking full advantage of what's offered through our employer plans. You may also consider an annual increase program, maybe 1 or 2% that might match up around the time when you may get an increase with your salary. But ultimately, for each of us, it's going to be individualized depending on how we want to spend retirement. Let me give you a couple examples. I work with a client, Phyllis. And Phyllis has raised 3 children in a big house with a couple dogs and a pool. And she's at the point in her life now that she wants to simplify. She told me her plans to move to a 1-story. It's got a smaller yard. It's close to her grandkids. But for her, at this point in her life, it's exactly what she wants. And she told me she's looking forward to the change. She's looking forward to handing over the duties at Thanksgiving to her children instead of hosting it herself. I have another family that I work with, Mark and Nancy, and they're going in the completely opposite direction. They're going big. Mark has had a private or recreational pilot's license for over 20 years. And when he came in, he said he wanted to find a way in his budget for him to buy a small plane for he and Nancy to literally be able to get up and go anywhere at any time they wanted. And so that's what we did.
Wow, that's definitely thinking big. My goodness. Well, it's actually a really good segue as well into our 7th topic, and it's something that scares a lot of people. It's thinking about how you're going to spend your time in retirement. So we have a question on this as well. So let's take a look. Jose at Genentech is asking, what is the one thing people near retirement say they wish they would have done earlier? So Marcia, we talk a lot about how near retirees are excited to take that next step, but they're not sure what they're going to do. So what would you say to Jose and our viewers about that?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right, Carrie. And this is the kind of thing I hear a lot, time and time again, from retirees. And they tell me that, they just didn't know what to do with all that time on their hands. We want all this free time when we're working, but then we don't know what to do with it. So, Jose, most retirees wish they had spent more time finding real, intangible ways to fill their very empty days. And today, I know everyone is busy. We haven't had time to think all that much about how we're going to spend our days. We just hope to get a 2-week vacation squeezed in. But lots of folks who have been thinking about retirement tell me they are going to travel. And, it's something also on my list. But when I push just a little harder about how long will you be traveling, well, they usually say 3 weeks or a month. But, retirement is just not a 3-week vacation. It's 30 years filled with Saturdays. So that's something like 11,000 days. It would be a lot of travel. So what's important is that you start early to figure out something that will anchor your days. You're replacing what you're doing at work for 40 hours a week every week, but now you need to do it for 30 years. So it's not always easy to figure this out. Some examples that people have shared, volunteering is a popular thing people are doing as they move into retirement. Walking dogs, it actually is a job and working part-time, and it's part-time we hear a lot, probably second to traveling. Some people want to write, some want to learn to cook. A few folks have even mentioned backpacking and bird watching. So there's a lot of creative ideas out there. It's finding the time to figure that out in advance. And there's a great statistic from a recent Fidelity survey that revealed the following. 60% of husbands want to spend more time with their wives when they reach retirement. But only 43% of us wives want to spend more time with our husbands. So it's going to be quite a conversation between the spouses.
That's funny, but that's totally true. I see it all the time where one spouse has a pretty good idea exactly how they want to spend time. The other one has no idea whatsoever. I work with a couple, Paula and Lance, and Lance retired in January of last year, and Paula retired in December. We had a meeting in the summer in the middle, and I remember asking Paula, I said, have you figured out yet how you're going to spend every day now that it's a Saturday? And she said, yeah, I feel pretty good about what I'm doing. But then she looked over at Lance and back at me and said, but he needs some help. And I said, really, why is that? And she said, well, he's already bored. I actually caught him mowing the yard twice this week.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Well, we all want more free time, but sometimes too much free time can be not such a good thing. All right, so let's keep moving. So certainly another factor that you have to think about when you go to retire is deciding where you'll retire, and that's number 8 on our list. And of course, there's many possibilities where you might live when you retire, and we've got a question on this as well, so let's take a look at that. So Danielle from Oracle is asking, what considerations should I keep in mind when choosing the next home to buy? I'm in my mid-50s and I'd like to live in the next house for the next 30 years or so. So John, what are your clients thinking about when they talk to you about where they're going to live? How do they make that decision?
Sure, Carrie. I think most people I meet with, their plan is to kind of stay put. They've either just paid off their mortgage or they've been in the same community for a long time and they have a lot of strong ties there. I find next that a lot will say, well, I want to move back to where my hometown is at. I've got a lot of extended family there, and again, they've got a lot of ties. And then third, we've got people that say, you know what, I'm just ready to try something completely new, a whole new adventure in life. It reminds me of a couple that I work with, Bob and Karen, and they live in Fort Worth, Texas. And when they moved to Fort Worth 30 years ago, they lived kind of on the outside of town. But now Fort Worth has grown. It's a lot busier area, and so their plan is to move near Austin to the Texas Hill Country. They can spread out with a little bit more space. It's a little bit quieter pace of life, but it's still close to some great shopping, and there's also a winery there that they're looking forward to going to.
Nice.
I know, Marcia, you run into these types of things as well.
Right. Up here in the New England area and in the Midwest, we've got the snowbirds. So since we have weather to contend with, you know, folks live up here in the northern areas of the country during the nice weather, and then they head south for the winter. But two situations I'm seeing more and more is that people are either relocating because their parents need the additional support, so they're going to where their parents are, or they're making the move to be near the grandkids. So, you know, both ends of the family spectrum. And Danielle, what we found so interesting about your question is what to consider when you're buying a new home in your 50s, but thinking you might stay put for 30 years. And while I, of course, don't know your personal situation, you know, that could be optimistic because it puts you into your mid-80s. So you're making a decision today that impacts you, you know, in your mid-80s. So would you be as mobile 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now as you are today? You know, or do you have children or grandchildren that you might want to live near, or even the aging parents? You know, will you need to move in 10 years unexpectedly? You know, at some point, could you need easier access to different services or just want to get out of the winters? So you'll consider lots of things, including financial implications of where to live in retirement or as you're moving into retirement. So are you moving to a state where it's more tax-friendly to retirees? You know, think about and take a look at and research property tax rates, state taxes, estate taxes. You know, each state gets to determine the types of retirement income that they tax, and it changes all the time. So you'd need to check that out. Check to see if your current state and your new state, maybe do they tax Social Security? Do they tax pension income? There's just so many things to think about as you think about where to live. And the fact is, many retirees make 2 or 3 or 4 different relocations during retirement.
So sure, deciding where to live, that can be a really big consideration as you think about retirement. That's great. So moving on to number 9, and really this one is for people at any age, but it's especially important when you're over the age of 50, and that's preparing for the unexpected. And we've got a question about this as well. So let's see. Nancy at Valspar, she sounds like she's preparing for the unexpected. She's asking, do you have any information regarding durable powers of attorney, wills, and trusts? Okay, so Marcia, you know, a lot of our viewers want to be prepared for the unexpected. So what would you say to Nancy and our viewers on that one?
Well, you know, Carrie, I have one very important piece of wisdom to share, and that is it is critical for you to have an estate plan so that you can be prepared for the unexpected. Now, most people think estate plans are only for the wealthy, but they're not. And among other things, your estate plan is a series of legal documents that spell out your wishes and commands in the event something goes awry. So you generally start with a will. Most of us are familiar with the will. It's a legal document that allows you to pass much of your property to one or more named individuals, and that's great. But what we don't realize and we don't know is that your retirement accounts are not covered in your will. You need separate beneficiary designations on every single retirement account. Your 401k, your 403b, your IRAs, all of them need beneficiary designations. Now, your estate plan also documents your choices for a power of attorney. That's the person you choose to speak for you, make decisions for you, and have access to your financial accounts if you are too ill or incapacitated to do so on your own. So this is a big responsibility. And then you need healthcare documents to give doctors and medical staff permission to talk to the person you've named and take direction from them when you're not able. Now, the estate plan can also include trusts or life insurance directions or any gifting requests that you have. And in addition, there's one other plan you'll want to pull together, and that's your personal legacy plan. Now, I like to think of my estate plan as the main living area in my house. That's where all the important documents are and protection is. But the attic, like where my grandmother's attic, is where my treasures are. It's the family history, the photos, the stories, the old wedding dresses, all those kinds of family treasures that become the basis of family legacy that I'd like to pass along and protect. So you can simply write a note or a letter indicating who will receive each of these treasures. And really, I can't encourage you enough to get your estate and legacy plans pulled together right away. It's just very difficult to navigate the complex healthcare and financial systems when someone becomes incapacitated or dies without these documents in place.
Yeah, Marcia, these are such important conversations and decisions to make. I like to try to simplify estate planning a little bit. I often tell clients, it's kind of like a honey-do list for your finances and your healthcare decisions. And what I mean by that is you need to have written instructions in place for your loved ones to follow. And I can't tell you how many times that when we check to see if their beneficiary is up to date, it's either missing or it's wrong. And the reason why this happens is, people get married, they get divorced, often they'll move, and when setting up their new plan, it just somehow gets overlooked in the new setup. And so I really encourage people to consider just giving us a call to make sure that this important information is up to date. It only takes a couple minutes.
Yeah, and there's clearly so much to cover when it comes to estate planning, right? Now, this brings us to our last item in the top 10, and that is to make sure that you're taking advantage of a personalized retirement planning meeting. And we've got a question on this topic right here. So we heard from, Gary at Givaudan Fragrances. I hope I said that right, Gary. Carrie, pardon me, it's Carrie, who's asking exactly the right question. So how can I schedule a personalized retirement planning meeting? Great question, of course. So, Marcia, can you break it down for our viewers and for Carrie?
Oh, sure, Carrie and Carrie. We know that this is the first time that you may be thinking about all these moving parts to retirement, and it can seem pretty unwieldy. But it is easy to schedule a personal retirement planning meeting by calling Fidelity to make the appointment. It's also a good idea to take planning in small steps. And here are 3 good places that will help you get a running start. First is the budget worksheet that we've talked about a little bit. It really can help you put a price tag on how much your retirement expenses might be, and it gives you that section for including all of your income sources. Very good place to start. The next stop is ssa.gov. That's the Social Security website, and it is so valuable for figuring out what you'll need for both Social Security and Medicare. And third is to use Net Benefits to get the latest information about your retirement plan at work. And here you'll find good information and tools about retirement. So if you can do a little bit of preparation before your planning meeting, you'll get a lot more out of your time.
Marcia, I totally agree. My biggest suggestion is just give us a call. We can simplify all of this for you. I always say we're here to help you get organized and get your own personal plan in place so that you can worry less about how you're going to pay for retirement and spend more time planning your retirement party. I work with a client, Regina, and she's preparing for retirement as a police officer. And we had a couple meetings over the phone, and then we met in person. And I know as we were meeting and putting kind of the final touches on her plan, she started to smile a little bit. And I looked over and I said, well, congratulations, Regina. How do you feel? And she leaned forward and she said, "You know, John, I feel great. My retirement party's tonight and I'm ready to celebrate."
Oh, that's great. That is a good ending to our top 10 list. We love to hear about folks successfully retiring, of course. And we loved hearing your many questions about these top 10 topics. Thank you so much for submitting them. Now remember, many of you did ask some specific situational questions about what's going on in your lives. Our Fidelity representatives have extensive experience working with individuals on their retirement plans, and they are prepared to help you with your specific questions. So do give us a call. And remember also that there's no charge to meet with Fidelity. Your employer offers you this service as a free part of being in your retirement savings plan. So you can call us to schedule your appointment today. The number's right there on your screen. It's 888-766-6813. So thanks so much, Marcia and John. So appreciate all your time today. And especially thank you to all of you who've taken this very important step on your path to a successful retirement.